Hi everyone, welcome to Houston Baptist University's Psych 6301 Principles of Human Development. So glad you're here for this journey. This is our last video, so hang on, the ride is almost over. We're about done. In Module 8, we're looking at later adulthood, so adults over 60, 65, somewhere in that range. In Module 8, we are covering Chapter 17 and 18 in the Erfurt textbook. Chapter 17, as usual, covers the physical and cognitive development in later adulthood, and 18 covering emotional and social development. So, as we age, what's going on? Everybody wants to understand or to stop the aging process and live forever and die a good-looking corpse and so on, and yet our systems do wear down. So as we look at the theories of physical aging, there's your wear and tear theory. The more you use it, the more worn out it is, like this rusty old car here in this photo. You can see the difference between a young woman's hand and the hand of an elderly adult. This is just some of the biological systems actually aging. Your eyes can't see. You need readers after you hit age 30, 40, somewhere in there, and things just kind of decline somewhat. So there are biological systems that are aging. There is caloric restriction, that if you actually restrict, there's a theory that if you restrict calories, you will live longer and extend your lifespan. More research is definitely needed in that area because it depends on what you eat, right? It's not how many calories you eat, it's what you eat. Are you eating a nutritional food or are you eating junk food? Hopefully the nutritional factor plays an important role in how it happens and how we age. And then there's damage-based theories saying that over time, your cycle of cell renewal and replacement slows and eventually cells die out. In this theory, you'll learn about telomeres. Make sure you know what telomeres are. You can Google it. You can actually take some tests to see how frayed your telomeres are. So make sure you read about that. And then there's the theory where free radicals are what causes the aging process and the damage to the body. And radiation that we are surrounded by, the sun produces radiation, all of our technology, using Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, these are all forms of radiation, and these are all contributing to aging as this radiation has its impact on the human body. So those are some of the theories about physical aging. Here we have some of the key social theories about aging. Life course perspective, lifespan development theories, role theory, exchange theory, and person-environment theory and ecological theory of aging. So make sure that you look through each of these and feel comfortable with them before you take a test on this chapter. Let's see, next slide, cognition. There's a definite trend for some cognitive decline in elderly persons. But what's the difference between mild or major cognitive decline? And when do we know the difference? When is it just, a senior moment, as opposed to, we better have them tested for Alzheimer's or dementia and so on. So we're going to look at the symptoms very carefully. And with mild cognitive impairment, memory, language, and other daily living activities, some problems. But dementia is more of a global decline. There's memory, and there'll be another area as well, such as comprehension, not understanding words that they used to be able to understand, learning or spatial, they're not able to learn new information, and then spatial orientation as well. As far as the impact that it has on the person in their life, mild, it could be noticed by others, but it's not severe enough to interfere with the majority of things that they do. Whereas dementia, you cannot trust them with their daily life activities and personal care. Diagnostic tools, we would use a mini mental status exam, a Montreal cognitive assessment, the memory of an aging telephone screen, and so on. So these are some of the instruments we would use to rule out dementia or Alzheimer's. And then the definitive diagnosis is fine post-mortem, look at the brain itself. But that's a little bit late if you're having to live with it and you didn't know earlier, right? So next slide. Death is the final result physically. Dying is the process with death is the end point. But what is death actually? You're going to find that defining death is not that easy. It used to be someone's heart stopped. Okay, they're dead. And yet now we have the technology to keep people's heart pumping, keep the lungs pumping and breathing oxygen in and out. So if we can keep them alive, heart and lung capacity and so on, are they really dead? So then we start looking at the brain activity. And if the brain is functioning, then they're still alive. But even if the heart and the lungs are not functioning on their own, are they dead or alive? So it gets a little bit complicated. So make sure you read carefully in the textbook. The one thing we do know that death will come, and there are people who have worked in hospice and worked with people who have terminal illnesses and death is coming. When do you call the family? When do you know? There are there's a list in the book of specific things that indicate that death will be coming soon, such as lack of circulation to the hands and the feet, because the body stops sending the blood out because it's trying to protect the heart, lungs, and torso. So when the hands and feet start getting cold and turning blue, then you know the time is short and death is near. So there's a lot to death and dying, socially, emotionally as well, but we'll get into that in the next chapter. So just make sure you consider what is death and think about all the important decisions that have to be made. Do you want to be kept on machinery to keep your heart and your lungs going, or you can make all kinds of decisions. You need to notify people, and you need to report to someone who can be counted upon to make sure you fulfill your wishes, because it's very hard for them to say, no, take them off of the ventilator, take them off of all the machinery, because they love you and they don't want you to go. So it's a very interesting part of the chapter. Make sure you read thoroughly. And here we have the psychosocial aspects of later adulthood. It's really hard when you get into later adulthood and you start looking at the obituary page and seeing people that you know. And you start going to more and more funerals as your friends, family members, siblings, and so on pass on. The social relationships are a source of great strength. In fact, the quality of the social relationships in later life is a key indicator of the needs and the risks of these important relationships that people maintain with siblings, grandchildren, children, and so on. If you become a widower, and lose a spouse that takes a particularly difficult toll on a person. And another problem socially is ageism. People thinking, oh, you're so old, you can't do that. And yet there's still a lot of cognitive ability, there's a lot of wisdom in old age. And yet there are many people who don't respect the elderly. And that's difficult for them. Sometimes we can say, oh, honey, and oh, sweetie. And that's a little bit patronizing, and that's a form of ageism, actually. And we have the silent epidemic of preying on the Americas, on the elderly people in America and other countries. It is often elderly people who fall prey to financial scams. Nursing home personnel are often found to abuse them, and so in many cultures they won't put their elderly into a nursing home or retirement home, and so they would rather keep them themselves, but that's very difficult and so on. So the forms of elderly abuse include physical abuse, as we see in the picture here, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, exploitation, financial, neglect. Children and grandchildren don't come visit, we neglect them, and even abandonment. Very scary, sad stuff. Respect the elderly. Then there are some various psychosocial theories dealing with older adults, such as Erikson. Erikson says that in this time of life, we experience ego integrity or despair, one or the other. It's kind of looking back over your life and reviewing all of the things you've accomplished and so on, and then you find either satisfaction or you find despair. And maybe try to make amends with some people. Then there are life review sessions, which groups of elderly people getting together, reviewing their lives, and this can be a very healing time for the elderly to do this. Peck came up with the theory with the tasks of old age, and here we see that here in this, the differentiation versus work role preoccupation and so on. Suddenly, I don't have a job. What do I do when I wake up in the morning and so on? I don't look as good as I used to look when I was younger. How do I deal with that? So all these things. And Fisher has 5 periods of older adulthood, and Rodney P. also has a theory that you need to be familiar with. So make sure you've looked at all these theories and are familiar with them. Read carefully before the test. More socio-emotional theories include disengagement theory, activity theory, continuity theory, and then selective optimization and with compensation. And that theory is just saying that as you get older, you realize, okay, I maybe can't play tennis anymore, but hey, maybe ping pong is something that I could play. Or so you optimize the things that you can do, and you compensate for the things that you cannot do. Maybe I can't babysit the baby anymore because they're too heavy for me to pick up, but I'm going to make some videos of me reading books, and I'm going to send those to my grandchildren. So my grandchildren at least are a part of know me, and I'm a part of their lives inside. So that we select and optimize the things that we want to do and can do well still, and then compensate in the areas that we are not quite as good anymore. There are some good theories here. We're going to focus on goals that are meaningful in old age. At that point in life, wise enough to know what is valuable way to spend your time and what's less valuable. And faith, spirituality, religion, and aging become or increase in importance in one's life as we get older. We find meaning and purpose for our lives in our faith. Faith gives us overall better well-being, gives us spiritual maturity, it leads to resilience. Overall, those who are committed to their faith experience greater resilience and continued personal growth. They also are more altruistic, do good things for other people, and they're socially connected through the people that they practice their faith with. In all honesty, God is who gives meaning to all of life, and the cross is what is the point? If we're all going to die and go to hell, then it's not a very good, positive or reassuring thing to think about. But because of what Christ has done on the cross, we can find meaning and we can have hope for the future, even with the knowledge that death is impending. As usual, these presentations are not intended to be thorough and complete coverage of the information that you need to know for the exams or any of the other activities for this course. These videos are supplemental and they are intended to